Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 10 of Politics of the Empire, presented by the EmpireMedia.com. It is actually, believe it or not, May 7th and our first episode of 2019. Um, complicated issues involving me also being on the road for work for 3 months straight and relocating. As you might be able to tell by my background, I am not in studio with Adam and Josh, my co-hosts here tonight. I have moved about 200 miles away, and we'll be, forever doing shows remotely, probably forever. So, anywho, tonight's topic of discussion is, let's just summarize it in this phrase: it's a private company; it can do what it wants. This was actually, believe it or not, in our hopper of topics to do beforehand, before the recent hubbub about the purge of so-called right-winger conservative thinkers off social media, or specifically Twitter here in the last couple of days, but a broader effort of social media over the last 6 or so months. Guys, before we get into it, I know it is kind of topical, and that's not what we try and do here. But just give me a one-sentence explanation of your thoughts. I want you to recap of what you think. Is the purge, is it as a big deal as some on the right are making it out to be? Before we get into the deeper philosophical discussion of the topic overall, just give me a quick 2-sentence summary of the current task at hand.
This is Josh. It is a big deal because of the bigger philosophical things that we're going to discuss here. With that being said, that shouldn't play my hand as to whether it's right or wrong before we get into it, because there's a lot to it. But even though I can see why you say, oh, it's not that big a deal, but it is a big deal for the future and the conversation it's going to open up. And that's why I'm glad we're doing this show tonight. Because, like you said, this was a good show to do even 6 months ago. But right now it happens to be topical. So, it's kind of a big deal. But, I get a lot of opinions on both sides of it.
Okay, Adam, what about you?
I guess I want to be careful that we don't get into the... I don't want to get too much into what has happened over the last couple of days, because I have a feeling that may take over the majority of the conversation.
Well, that's why I'm trying to handle this now, because I don't want it to do that. Yeah.
I think this is ironic, what happened over the course of the past couple of days, with guys like Paul Joseph Watson and who else was purged? Laura Loomer. What's his face? Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan.
Yeah.
Which, ironically enough, you don't hear any of the right-wing people talking about, like the Laura Loomers and the Paul Joseph Watsons. You don't hear people defending Louis Farrakhan and all of this either.
I think you're not looking deep enough, because I've seen plenty of that from the right, believe it or not.
Bottom line for me, I think all of those people are just cretins and shitty human beings, but I'll leave it at that. Go ahead, Dorf.
Okay. Well, actually, that's a fairly good jumping off point. The notable names that have been banned in the last couple of days, outside, I think Paul Joseph Watson is just edgy. He tries too hard to be edgy. But the rest of them, I would agree with your characterization of despicable, or not uncouth is probably a better word for it. However, we need to kind of start with the discussion of, what is public discourse, free speech rights. And that kind of gets into it, it's a private company, it can do what it wants, because contrary to semi-popular belief, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution only necessarily protects individuals from speech suppression from the government itself, it does not therefore protect, as written, suppression of speech by companies against individuals. And how, there's deeper philosophical issues to this. The business doesn't have to have. I'm still very much against the business being required to take you as a customer. If it doesn't want your business, it doesn't want you. That should be okay. It should have its right to turn down revenue. In this case, it should have any business should have its right to turn down revenue. It's up to them to make their own business decision for their own interest. And if they don't want you, because your eyeballs and your participation on social media is advertising revenue for them, and which is how they make about 90% of their money. But at the same time, with the power and influence and political influence of social media, should there be the ability for, I hate, this is such a dirty and tainted word now, but should there be the removal of political figures by private companies be considered election interference? And that's kind of where I want to jump off and get your thoughts here. Is, the primary, the election of 2020 is still 18 months out, 16 months out. However, it is a regular term presidential election. So, the campaign, as you've seen, definitely on the Democratic side of the presidential equation, has begun already. Is this political interference or an unregulated political contribution to the left by the likes of Twitter?
Dorf, I want to chime in on one thing you said. That I'm not trying to be totally disagreeable, but you said that the First Amendment protects us only from the government infringing on our free speech.
Sure.
That isn't necessarily true. Well, and I'm not saying, but hear me out. I'm not saying that this necessarily, matters to social media per se, but all rights.
Josh, you're not wrong. I agree with you here. It's if you want to be a literalist interpretation of what's written, that's all it does. However, the way it's been interpreted by the courts, it's been used in common practice for a very long time. That protection also extends outside of the directly between government to citizen, realm.
Right. All I'm saying is that others cannot infringe on your free speech. The government protects your rights. Others can infringe on your free speech, and the Ninth Amendment shows that you cannot that citizens can't use other rights to infringe upon or destroy another right. That doesn't. I'm not saying that pertains to social media right now. I'm just trying to kind of clarify for the audience that that there is a point there to be made. And that's true for any right. It's, you can say like, well, it's not the government quartering soldiers in my house. It's, it's this private group. Well, no, you're not allowed to do that. Another thing that I think is really important to say, and that, it's maybe a good thing to lead with before you kind of go to the next point, is that the First Amendment gives us the right to free speech. It does not give us a right to an audience.
That is true.
So when you're saying that, oh, I'm being silenced, it's like, well, are you being silenced or are you having followers removed on social media? That's not really that isn't being silenced necessarily when there are other avenues to exercise one's free speech.
Adam, you're kind of quiet here. What you got for me?
Hey, I'm that Michael Jackson meme right now, eating popcorn. So, I mean, it's funny because I said this was ironic because it's funny because Josh, I saw he posted a meme that kind of relates to this. Well, it relates directly to this. You know, the one of the guy sweating and wondering what button to push. You know, should a bakery be forced to bake a gay cake or a cake for a gay wedding, or and then there's the social or the Twitter purge of the likes
Twitter can ban who they want because they're a private company.
Exactly. Well, you know what? That works both ways, because the same thing that we're hearing from these people, namely right wingers, is, oh well, they can't ban Paul Joseph Watson and Laura Loomer. It's that's unconstitutional. It violates their freedom of speech.
Well, first off, both of those people
they're not,
in question are actually foreign nationals.
Yes, correct. But people are still going to be talking about the whole notion of free speech, even though.
And I agree, Adam, that can be used.
Hold on a second. And you're probably going to get to this here in a second, Josh. But I mean, the argument can go the other direction too. I mean, that's what makes this whole thing so ironic. And also, it's usually people on the right wing that are always talking about, privatization, this and that. Companies should be able to do what they want. Well, and another thing I always hear too, Will, is if you don't like it, why don't you go ahead and start your own company, or why don't you go ahead and start, your own blog, and which a lot of these individuals already have. And Josh already mentioned too about, oh, well, are they removing their freedom of speech, or are they removing their audience? Paul Joseph Watson is going to have an audience. And I'm sorry, these guys were purged on Facebook, not Twitter. Mm-hmm. I mean, you go and look at Paul Joseph Watson's, Twitter reach, it's still pretty astronomical. So, I mean, is that the real issue here? And like I said, too, it's an argument that can go both ways. And a lot of these people that are griping over this, they're going to be the same ones that, when we're talking about, and I know it may be down the line too, whether we're talking about socialism and capitalism, these are going to be the same people that are going out there talking about capitalism and defending it, saying, oh, well, everybody has the opportunity to go out and start their own business. Well, in this sense, too, everybody has their own opportunity to go out and start their own social media platform, or their own blog, or their own methods.
I have a perfect jumping off point from there.
Go ahead.
This is part of the reason why I was very much of it's a private business. It can do what it wants. Hands off, don't tread on me. Yada, 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 prior to about 4 months ago. The perfect example of, well, you can go start your own insert X business to compete with it is Gab. Gab, the attempted, essentially it's a Facebook-Twitter combo. More Twitter than Facebook.
We can just say social media or use them interchangeably at this point for the intents and purposes of this show.
Yeah.
There's lots of social media outlets.
Its job, its role that it wanted to play was a Twitter replacement. Well, they did. They took your advice, people out there, and well, they did. They started their own with free speech in mind. The two major app stores, which control 98% of all app downloads in the Western world, that being the Google Play Store and the iPhone App Store, banned them because they refused to, go against their core mission of being an entirely free speech platform, which is, if you take their founder, I don't have a Gab account. I don't know exactly how toxic, I hate that word, but the atmosphere is. But they said that, they will comply with the laws of the United States, and if they'll only remove posts if it violates the laws of the United States. They won't filter for anything else. That got them banned from both the app stores. So functionally, they're no longer allowed to distribute their product. They then faced a purge from their host. GoDaddy refused, gave them 24 hours to move their business because, I call it the crybaby mob, came after GoDaddy, and they decided that the pain, the hassle wasn't worth having Gab's business, and so they moved there. Payment processors, when it comes from either from crypto or standard payment processors, have come after them. So hell, they've been working on their own one of those too. They also recently, because they also launched a browser extension called Dissenter, which allows essentially, it's a browser extension where any single web page across the entire internet can have its own Dissenter comment section, because you see a lot of places like, specifically, I hate to rag on Adam's favorite news network here, but CNN.com turns off their comments on a lot of controversial topics. And so they decided to make their own comment section, which was, believe it or not uniquely their own idea. Google actually tried that about 8 years ago and it failed. Mozilla and the Google Chrome extension store and a couple others have banned it. So they made their own damn web browser. They're running out of places. They're very, very have been, I don't have a Gab account. I don't know exactly how it works. I can only read what I see about it, in news articles. And let's put it this way: there ain't a lot positive coming out about Gab from the mainstream media. I tend to not put a lot of stock in that. Well, you probably know why. Bottom line is, Gab still around? Yeah, but can you get to it from a Google? Can you get to it from Google? Yes, you still can for now. Okay. And that's my point. It's kind of that slippery slope of, well, it's a private company, it can do what it wants, to, well, they've, everybody who's, because their refusal to back away from the spirit of the First Amendment, they have, literally, well, go make your own domain registrar, go make your own payment processor, go make your own social media site. The guys over at Gab have literally done all that, and each and every public, I hate to call it a public utility because it's not, it's still a private business, but each public utility that you or I or pretty much anybody else across the entire world would be able to take advantage of, as long as you're willing to pay your money, they've been turned away from. The thing is, though, Dorf, yeah, go ahead. I was gonna say, like, a lot of this though is kind of flavor of the week type of stuff, because I remember you and I were talking about the whole Gab thing before. I remember you mentioning something to it about me and saying, oh yeah, Gab is, they got thrown off, their website is shut down. Gab, since that though, Gab has been up for quite a while. And they've grown quite rapidly. Another one too, and this happened just after Charlottesville, but the Daily Stormer, which is just an awful, awful, awful website. It's a neo-Nazi website, and I've only ever been on it like twice. I can't decide whether or not it's just like cringe fan fiction or if it's real. It's awful. It's an awful website. Oh, it is. And they had problems. Right after Charlottesville, because of an article I believe they published about the girl that was killed, it kept on getting taken down. Nobody, I think it was originally on GoDaddy as well. GoDaddy got rid of it. They tried to go on another server. That server got rid of it. They tried to go to another server. It was a Russian domain host. Yeah, eventually they had to retreat to the dark web, and obviously it would stay up in the dark web, and the only way I think you could get to it was through a Tor browser. But now they're up on that. Are they back up? Yeah, now they're up on the regular web again. I don't think they have a .com, but they're still up, and they've been up, I believe, for quite some time now, and nobody has gone after. I think they have a .name account now, but nobody's going after that. I believe they're probably still as popular as ever just because of what they've gone through. And like I said, a lot of this is flavor of the week. Companies are going to wait for a lot of this stuff to blow over, and they'll go ahead and pick it up when people aren't paying attention or when the mainstream media isn't harking on it anymore. That's what happens with a lot of this stuff.
Can I chime in for a second, guys?
No. Yeah, go ahead. No, Josh, turn his mic off.
I will.
We will not give Josh his freedom of speech.
I wanted to say, Adam, what you said earlier about the sweaty button pusher guy.
Yeah.
That I share variations of that meme a lot, and you are 100% right that when right-wingers or left-wingers share that meme, it is typically hypocritical. But I want to stand firm in the idea that when you're a small government libertarian like me, it's rarely hypocritical. It's intended to criticize both sides, and it does. Now, one thing that I want to throw in with that is that could almost be a making of that meme, what you were just saying, that if we're going to go with it's a private company can do what it wants, then this neo-Nazi site you're talking about, whatever it is, I've never been there. I don't know. What did you say it was? Daily Stormer. Daily Stormer. If that's the case, well, the internet itself, the World Wide Web, is not a privately owned thing. So if you're going to go with this idea, then, well, it's a privately owned company. They can do what they want. And if you're going to have a website, if you're going to allow things like Facebook, things like Twitter, things like, then to remove whomever they want, whenever they want to do it, then you better not have a problem with some web page that's talking about neo-Nazi stuff, talking about KKK stuff. If you either support, if you support free speech, you support bad speech, you support hate speech. If you don't, then you don't actually support free speech. You just don't. Because the main thing is who the hell defines what that is. But aside from that, the main thing that because I struggle with this, I do struggle with this, and I'm totally behind it's a private company, it can do what it wants. Facebook is absolutely a private company. Twitter is absolutely a private company. I guess one of the questions I would ask, though, is, and I don't mean anyone in particular when I say this, Google, whatever, Facebook, whatever, but does it cease being private? And I'm throwing a bunch of air quotes out, when I'm saying this stuff, but does it cease being private when it has public funding and or government regulation? If something is government regulated, is it still a private company? Now, that's kind of a weird question, because it can still be a private company, but does it still get all the rules? Does it still not? It's not completely a private company rule-wise, much like the auto companies, right?
By that interpretation of things, there is no such thing as a private company.
Well, that's a problem. That's an issue. That's an issue in and of itself.
I agree with you from a philosophical perspective. However, from a practical perspective, it's that sort of perspective is dead on arrival, because you know what? If it's in e-business only, the internet is a largely publicly traded, not publicly traded, but public utility. Not necessarily in the United States, but across the world. The electricity are government-regulated utilities, which is necessary to keep your lights on and run your internet. If it's a physical business,
that's not what I mean, though.
It pertains to physical commerce. Hang on. Let me flesh this out. If it's a physical business that participates in physical commerce, it all occurs because roads and bridges, which are paid for by public funds and are patrolled by officers who are paid in the public and maintained by people who are public employees. That's that those private businesses, if that's our definition of a private business, is one that is entirely unregulated, there is no such thing. And yes, we could sit here and philosophize on whether that's right, wrong, or otherwise, but if we want to actually do anything practical here, we got to drop that definition, because there is no company in the history of the world, at least in the last, let's say, 100 years, that meets that definition of entirely unregulated.
No, he's a philosophizer now.
Okay, that isn't true. There's actually tons of private companies that do not have federal regulations. Tons. I run one myself. There's no federal regulations on
sort of federal participation.
Okay, but hang on. Please let me finish. Okay.
Okay.
We're not talking about something that has no content. Okay, first of all, sitting around philosophizing is what I'm here to do. So
I know.
I was talking about what was that movie? Oh, Dodgeball.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a philosophizer now. Okay, but I'm not talking about something that just never crosses paths with any sort of government regulation, which, as you know, I do have a problem with that. But I'm talking about companies like Facebook and Google who have gone to the federal government seeking regulation.
Yeah,
and no company does
very
that.
Good point.
No company does that
unless
they have an ulterior motive. Unless they want to, for instance, shut down other businesses.
Exactly. Good point there.
The only one I can even think of that have done this in American history is the auto companies. The auto companies wanted to be regulated. Did they want to be regulated because they wanted to be regulated? No, they wanted to be regulated to ensure that their competition stayed as is. So what the problem you have with companies like Facebook and Twitter, and I'll focus on them. I'm not saying there isn't other ones. Because, as I was going to say real quick before, if you want an example of a company that was killing the field and seemed like a monopoly and was proven that it can be overtaken, go talk to MySpace. If you want an example of one that they thought you could only have one social media and it wasn't room for anybody else, go talk to Facebook.
Never a multi-billion-dollar business.
Okay, I'm just saying that at one point it was the thing. And at one point we thought there was only room for one.
Two companies,
Facebook, but other ones have popped up.
Digital advertising in this. There's three companies that cover the entire digital advertising space to like the 99th percent. That being Google, Facebook, and Microsoft.
Okay, yeah.
They have editorial control about what you can advertise. That being, including political ads. Is that undue political influence that doesn't require regulation to be neutral? Because the same people that will bitch and complain about the undue political influence of Russians are the same ones that don't want Citizens United overturned. And I'm sorry. There is no such thing as a private company that can do it at once. We regulate fucking everything in the Western world. There's environmental regulations. There's employment regulations. There's, you name it. If you are participating in the United States, in the business industry of the United States, you should be expected to live up to a certain set of standards, including, and not limited to, living up to the spirit of the Constitution of the United States.
I don't disagree.
Okay. And unfortunately, that is going to mean, in my mind, the regulation of social media, because the potential for undue overburdening influence of, we have a lot of people who complain about the Electoral College because it gives the people in Idaho more political influence than the people in California, for an example. Why should then Mark Zuckerberg be allowed to essentially have global editorial control over political advertising that he won't take money from a right-wing, political interest group because it's pro-abortion or something like that? Because that's not in line with his means, which means he effectively is cut off 50% of the global advertising potential from that group because he disagrees with it. How is that okay if you're upset about other things such as, money in politics and, unproportional representation?
Well, Dorf, it is official. I mean, in my mind, it can't even be debated.
I don't like the precedent that, something is wrong here, therefore the government must fix it. I hate it. But unfortunately, after racking my brain for the last several months, I don't have anything better. And, blah, 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 oh, shucks, it's just the cost of doing business isn't good enough for me anymore. And unfortunately, I think that's what's really caused me to flip my stance here from, well, it's a private company, that's just the cost of doing business. If you don't like it, make your own, to, well, too bad, so sad. You should be expected to live up to the spirit of the United States Constitution and the way things have gone for, since the beginning of this country. If you don't like it, you can get out.
It is very obvious that Facebook and Twitter and Google do not live up to the. Hang on, let me say this. This goes to your point, but it also makes another one. it is obvious that those companies do not live up to the spirit of the Constitution or the First Amendment. The question at hand is, do they have to? No, they definitely don't. And it should be an ideal. It's an ideal that people should want to support the rights of others. The question is, do they? Can they? And my issue with Facebook and Twitter particularly is that they first began as a company that said, hey, we're open to the public. They acted as if they were somebody that was going to allow the public to come in and speak freely, and they didn't care. They didn't say they had an opinion on anything. But now, after they have a monopoly on social media, after they have a hold on it, now they're going to start criticizing what people say and banning certain types of speech. That is a potential issue. It definitely is. Now, with that being said, on the other hand of it, it's a private company. It can do what it wants. Keep going back to the topic. Would I have a problem with them creating a social media platform that was called Communist Book? Where they said that. They come right out and say that. Would I have a problem with...
Don't give our comrade here any ideas.
Well, and then if I went on there and started being a troll and started trying to argue with everybody, they say, hey, this is supposed to be a spot where we can talk about the joys of communism. Get off here, you're banned. Just like if you had a Christian site. Could one not have a Christian social media site where people went on there and then they said, hey, no swearing allowed?
Jesus Book.
No, yeah, but would they not be allowed to ban somebody for swearing, or could a group of could the Church of Satan just grab it and just start putting atheist stuff up there and just having fun and just spamming the hell out of them? No, I'd like to think that if that happened, they could ban them. They'd say, no, come on, man, we're just talk about God. Get out of here.
Hey, Josh, to your point here, that's all fine and dandy. There is also law in the books currently of antitrust laws. Is it time for the United States federal government to flex its muscle and break up these, effective monopolies because they hold too much, not only economic power, this doesn't even get to the economic risk of putting all your eggs in only 3 baskets.
You know what?
But is it time for, the federal government to go trust busting again?
Hold on a second. Dorf, interesting you bring that up. I don't think that'll ever happen. Because you look and see... hold on. You see how much reach that platforms like Twitter and Facebook have. Hell, you could argue that Donald Trump was elected because of his Twitter presence. Mm-hmm. You could make a good argument
he makes that argument. He has
made that argument before. And politicians. Hold on, Dorf, 1 second.
No, I'm agreeing with you. There's very good scientific evidence to actually that him being a meme lord is the reason he got elected.
Well, that again, and to finish my point is that these politicians know that they're not going to go out there and ban one of their best campaign platforms, from here on out, and especially right now too, when we're in election season.
I'm not saying shut down Google.
No, I'm not saying
Facebook or shut down Twitter.
Well, you kind of are if you're trust busting.
But they're not. They're certainly not going.
Shutting them down. That would
but
be
the thing is,
them to divide their businesses.
Dorf, they're not going to do anything though that's going to upset the apple cart here, where they're going to run any risk of losing their own influence over these platforms.
Oh, absolutely. And here's another angle that people also forget about. Guess who's probably got all the dick pics from every congressman that, all of a sudden you don't want those to be on the internet, like you've seen potentially rumored of Jerry Falwell Jr. over the last couple of days here.
Zuckerberg and...
Yeah. Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey have all your dick pics.
Not mine. Never take one in my life.
It would sure be a shame if you attempted to do something that, was against their business and political interests. So, or all your private messages, or that one time you got a little bit flirty with somebody in a text conversation that didn't happen to be your wife. There is plenty of
or an
leverage.
Adam was on the thing for a while where he kept poking dudes on Facebook. that was a little iffy. Had us questioning his loyalty to his wife, and
done in private that still exists on those major company servers. Oh yeah, Google has your search history. Yeah, do you really want that to become public? Oh yeah, I'm gonna let's take the modern day example here. You've got Democrats in Congress suing for Trump's tax returns or whatever. How would you like them to sue Google for your search history?
Dorf, I like that you brought up the trust busting. That's not really an aspect I had considered too much. And I'm a big fan of Teddy Roosevelt as a man, not a huge fan of Teddy Roosevelt as a president. I've written quite a few papers on Teddy Roosevelt, took college courses that were about Teddy Roosevelt and only Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, I'm big into him. Read probably half a dozen biographies. But the problem with trust busting is that it rarely works. I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, when you look back historically...
The biggest example of trust busting, you could argue, in the history of the United States is Standard Oil.
Mm-hmm.
Is the United
I'd say
States
the railroads, actually. But it doesn't matter.
BNR or...
Reading.
No, I'm
reading.
No,
okay.
Standard Oil is the biggest example of breaking up. And was that better for the United States long-term economic health than energy security? Was it worth the cost? I would argue absolutely. The railroads have been consolidated again where it's an effective monopoly because there's only 6 railroad companies in the entire fucking United States right now. So
well, they had to put it back together because their trust busting almost killed the railroads, because then they realized that now it wasn't about a monopoly of railroad, it was about a monopoly of transportation.
As the cheapest,
and plus there's 4 sides to the monopoly board. I mean,
exactly.
You need to have,
Right. I mean, if you want to get proper rent, you're going to need them all.
The United States has the cheapest freight rail per ton per mile of the entire world.
Okay.
Tell me that it's failing.
Adam, this is a great topic, but this is not tonight's topic. Okay, we should maybe try to. I can talk about this all night.
I can do it too.
Well, then let's do it another night, because I know we all have a lot to say about this particular topic. Another problem with the idea of letting the government kind of break up a monopoly or trust bust on this is that what will happen. I can tell you right now what would happen, and then it would continue to polarize the country even more, because then we would have right-wing Facebook and left-wing Facebook. And then the problem is the fringe guys, who a lot of people consider me a fringe guy, a lot of people would consider Adam a fringe guy, we would still be banned on both of them. We would still be on the outside looking in. And they're not going to put together an anarchist Facebook and a libertarian Facebook.
No, because that would require
a non-state communism Facebook. So the problem is, all that does is the Republicans will control half of it, and the Democrats will control half of it, and that doesn't actually help the problem.
You mean the neolibs and the neocons?
Yes, okay. Exactly. And for instance, Adam, what's the dude you mentioned right at the beginning of the show that just got banned?
Paul Joseph Watson.
Yes, that guy. Okay, I will admit, I pay attention to this stuff a lot. I never heard of the guy. Until he got banned. That was the first I ever heard of him.
Never heard of Paul Joseph Watson?
Nope.
Wow.
No, I never had until he got banned, and then it was like, that's a thing. Okay, so the Democrats and Republicans will be just fine with banning people like that, because he doesn't really, work into it, no matter what. Another thing I think that goes to your point, Dorf, is sure, it's a private company. It can do what it wants. But you have to ask yourself, we have freedom of speech in this country, right? Or we're supposed to have freedom of speech. And the Constitution and the Bill of Rights lays things out in a way that it is supposed to. It's not a living, breathing document, but it is adaptable with the time. So to me, one of the biggest questions is, what good is free speech if you can't use it? You can say, "Oh, we didn't. It's not like we put you in jail for your Facebook post. We just banned you from Facebook." It's not like we sent cops over to your house for what you said on Twitter. We just kicked you off Twitter.
Believe it or not, is happening in other Western nations.
Oh, I know it is. I know it is. It's happening it happens in England quite a few times.
Oh, by the way, you're now being a troll on the internet is now a jailable offense in Australia.
Yeah, no, it's happened all over the place. But I mean, we're kind of, if we're not going to focus on American law here, then we don't have enough time to do this show. You know, that because that's a different question. It could be a different show for each country. But in the late 1870s, when Rutherford B. Hayes was president and Alexander Graham Bell, I don't want to say invented, but got the first patent on the telephone, the Republicans controlled Congress and controlled the White House at that time. Had they, said, if they had allowed telephones to be privatized, which they did, and said you could only talk about certain things on the telephone, then that would have changed. That would have, oh my God, how much would that have shaped history politically?
Oh, yeah.
But the telephone wasn't something they thought of. They had no idea in 1789, when they wrote the Bill of Rights, they had no idea that a telephone would be invented. But it was, and the Constitution goes to it. So now we have the internet. Now we have email. Now we have social media. Does our free speech not extend to these things? I mean, this is how we communicate now. So if you're saying, hey, well, yeah, you have a right to free speech, but, you can, that's not what they meant in the Constitution. Go get a podium and set it up, set it up outside and start talking, which, ironically, you're actually not allowed to do that now. You have to go get a permit.
Do you have a permit for that, bro?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny that I'm using that as an example, and that's actually have trampled that.
Perfect example to my point. There's regulations for everything, including on some speech, because you're not allowed to directly incite violence and the fire in a crowded theater, yada yada. But that is, I think a lot of that has to do with because you don't necessarily are able to infringe on the rights of others, because just because I want to go set up my mega soapbox in the middle of Times Square and block traffic so I can, scream about, I don't know, pick a topic.
Well, you could never block traffic or
that in violation of other people's rights.
Well, and the thing is, what they would say is, okay, you can't set up a podium in the middle of a park. You'd never be able to block traffic. That you couldn't do that in 1790s. If you set it up right where the horse and carriages went through, they'd have stopped you then too. But now they would say that's not how we speak anymore. That's not how we do it anymore. Well, how do we do it? We use social media. So that should be translated through that argument to we have freedom of speech on the internet, on social media.
And I don't disagree with you, Josh, but let's kind of bring this idea home here.
Sure.
I don't think, Adam's been pretty quiet here. I don't know his opinion on the subject. I've got a feeling, but he hasn't expressed it. I think we agree that the idea that in the United States, that is a cultural and legal value of free speech specifically that should be upheld. How do you ensure that happens? Go ahead.
How do you ensure that free speech is upheld?
Yes. If you agree with me that is a paramount right, not privilege, right, for citizens of the United States within the borders of the United States, how do you ensure that gets done?
In terms of what? Like, are you talking?
Okay, I'm not talking the. How do you make sure speech of citizens isn't suppressed by government? But if you want to extend the spirit of the First Amendment, not the Second Amendment, to citizen or business to citizen interactions, how do you ensure that happens? Is it a leave it alone, the market will take care of it? Is it a I need regulation XYZ? Is it some combination thereof? How do you get it done?
Well,
or if you don't think it should be done, do explain.
All right. I don't think that. Look, there's. Hold on, let me get the camera on myself. Okay, there is. I don't think that people are necessarily entitled to quote unquote free speech from the standpoint of they can go and do and say whatever the hell they want. Say whatever the hell they want, not do whatever the hell they want. Because what's that old saying, Josh? I'm gonna fuck it up here, but it's basically the basis of it is your freedom isn't justified by trampling on somebody else's freedom, something along those lines. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and that actually is what the Ninth Amendment is about.
Okay. So I'm probably citing the Ninth Amendment.
Yeah, you can't use one of your rights to infringe on the right of somebody else.
Okay. That's it.
Paraphrased.
Yep. That's, and I kind of see that along the lines of quote unquote free speech here. Take for instance Alex Jones. Alex Jones was purged from Facebook, from Twitter, from YouTube because of shit he was inciting on those platforms about the Sandy Hook families. Now, people are going to go on and on and on about Alex Jones's rights and so on and so forth. Okay, well, what about the rights of those families who are now all of a sudden being harassed and threatened by people because of what Alex Jones has been saying?
Hey,
go ahead.
By the way, Alex Jones being purged off social media, he's still syndicated by over 100 or so radio stations for his radio show.
True.
What I would say is that
estimated 2 million people a week.
Okay.
What I would say is that Alex Jones did nothing wrong. The people that harassed those people did, and that's a jailable offense.
Yeah, at the same time.
I don't care if Alex Jones said, "Hey, all you Alex Jones listeners, go harass the people who claim Sandy Hook happened." I don't care if he said that. I guess that is still freedom of speech. But that jerk that went out and did it,
and here's
then I got a problem with you.
There is a remedy that is actually being sought right now for that exact problem. Alex Jones is being sued in civil court for that action. He's probably going to lose. If that behavior is as reprehensible and causes harm to other people, there is a path and avenue within the law of the United States to take care of that, and it is currently being pursued.
I guess the bottom line to all of this is that, like many things in this country, freedom of speech has become a gray issue. It's no longer a black and white issue anymore. It is very, very much a gray issue when it comes to how people view it. And because I'm under the belief that you really can't just go out there and say what you want to say. If you go and you do that, then and under some circumstances, like I was saying, I will use that Alex Jones. I will continue to use that Alex Jones example throughout. That certain things some people say will incite other people. I know Josh disagrees with that. That's fine. But there is a fundamental problem with people with that type of influence that goes and says those types of things. I know that's probably not the answer that you're looking for, but that's what you're going to get right now.
Adam, I think you make some really good points there, actually. Where I think that it's not any more of a gray area than it ever was that you can't assume that because you have a right, that right multiplies upon itself. To me, one has the right to freedom of speech. They don't have the right to freedom of action. You can say whatever you want. You can say something violent. Why? Because words are never violent. There is not a word in the world that is violent, unless you're a Dune fan and you can do that thing where you break walls. But there's as soon as one acts upon it, then that's very different. Just kind of like what we were saying with the Ninth Amendment. I can't come in here and point a gun at Adam and say, you better not start talking about communism. And then say, what? I didn't do anything wrong. I have the right to bear arms. No, I have the right to own a gun. I don't have the right to point it at somebody. I have a right to own a gun. It doesn't say anywhere that you shall have the right to fire arms. It doesn't say anything about the right to shoot your guns. It just says you got the right to own them. It doesn't say that you have the right to act upon, insane ideas. But you do have the right to say them. And that's, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to not incriminate yourself with the Fifth Amendment. That doesn't mean you have the right to control other people's assumptions when you don't answer their questions. If I ask Dorf right now, hey, Dorf, you, I can't think of something incriminating that I would ask Dorf. You ask somebody like, hey, you've been smoking pot today?
No.
Well,
and they say, I'm not answering that question. And I say, you wouldn't answer my question about pot, so I think you were smoking pot. Well, you don't get to control my assumption, but you don't have to answer me either.
All right, you guys, we got to start wrapping this up, though.
Yeah, no, I was just going to bring it home with this. I have, I'm very much a change. Let's call it a changed man in this perspective. I no longer have faith that the market will handle this on its own. That leaves me with the only unfortunate alternative of, because I value the Constitution of the United States as it's been written and interpreted historically. I believe that businesses should live up to that standard. The market is not taking care of this on its own. The unfortunate reality of the situation is, unfortunately, that means regulation time, baby. And that sucks. It's not the most ideal situation, but I believe it is the reality of the situation, that it being a practical, taking a more practical perspective, that free speech specifically, which I know we've hammered home here today, not necessarily it's a private company can do it at once. I should be able to dump, acid into the river because, it's not my problem. I don't have to clean it up. I'm a private company. I can do what I want. We didn't even touch that angle today. Or I'm a private company. I should be able to sell a strategic asset like uranium to the Russians without a foreign adversarial government without regulation, because I'm a private business. I acquired it legitimately. I should be able to do what I want with it. If I'm the United States government, there's no way in fucking hell I allow that to happen. That's an entirely different, box of rocks that we didn't get into here today. I don't think that private businesses should be able to do whatever the hell they want. They should be able to do whatever the hell they want as long as it's in line with not only the text of the document of the United States Constitution, but the spirit of it as well, especially when it comes to this freedom of speech, because if you don't have that, almost the rest of it doesn't matter. Anything else, guys?
Yeah. May I ask one more question? We don't have to answer the question.
Okay.
I just want to leave the viewers and myself and you guys with this last question, because social media kind of at first was brought to us as something where, hey, you can just say what you want, and maybe it's becoming where that's not the case. So I would simply ask the question, leave everyone with the question: if they aren't a public forum, and they are going to police their postings, then should they now be liable for their content?
All right, we'll leave it at that. Let's go ahead and get another let's go ahead and pick the next episode or the next topic for because
good idea. Yeah,
we have
quite.
Go ahead, Dorf.
We have a couple in the hopper. I've got a list of about 15 that I never did make it over to you guys, but one of the 3 that you've got pre-selected, just do some sort of random selection.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, the ones that we have in there right now is socialism / communism, and there's more of a general topic to that. It's not just going to be socialism, communism. I believe Josh, you're talking about like the differences, or is there a difference between state communism and
the basic idea that people say, well, that's not real socialism, or that is that a valid thing to say?
It's a 1 hour attempt to define what real socialism is.
Perhaps.
Okay. The next one is the morality of taxation, and is voting useless. So those are our 3 in the hopper right now. We're gonna have more next time, but let's just say the next show is going to be what? 3 weeks from now.
Sounds
2
good.
or 3.
2 or 3. Okay. There. All right. So next week's show will be.
Come on, get a drum roll of some sort.
Socialism and communism.
This is going to be good, Dorf. Trust me.
Yeah.
This is going to be good. We're going to branch out and answer some questions.
I'm going to educate Dorf's capitalist mind on this one. So
that will be webisode number 11.
Yes, it will be.
And the worst part is I probably read more Marx than you.
Okay.
Hey guys, we all went to university in America. I'm pretty sure we read Marx.
I'm pretty sure
I did not read it for college. This is actually reading for my own self-interest, believe it or not.
All right. Okay. Anything else, Dorf?
No, I think that's it. Are you ready to wrap it up? We're all set?
I bet you didn't read more Marx than me.
Well, Josh, probably not. All right, guys, that is going to wrap up episode 10 here of Politics of the Empire, presented by theempiremedia.com. As we just alluded to, join us here in a couple weeks. We'll get the official date announced for you here